We're kind of familiar with that passage, do to others what you would have them do to you. It's one of the things that parents try to instill in their children all the time. It makes its way into the first needlepoint samplers or plaques, and people put on the wall, or greeting cards, or bookmarks for your Bible, do to others what you would have them do to you. Sometimes it even has written over top the golden rule. And in our 1962 prayer book, we said it, if we didn't do all the 10 Commandments, which we won't do today, but if we did all the 10 Commandments, if we didn't do all the 10 Commandments, we usually did the summary of the law. The first commandment is, the first and great commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So there's this concept of loving one another. And in fact, it's not just a Christian principle. When Jesus said those words, he was quoting Moses. And it goes through a lot of other religions as well. The same thing was taught in ancient Egypt. The same thing was taught in ancient Samaria. It's in the Hindu Sanskrit. It's in lots of places, to love one another as you want them to love, or do to others what you want them to do to you. Sometimes it's the other way around. Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. But it's still the same thing, a sense of keep it fair, keep it reciprocal. So that sense of reciprocity, you do to me and I'll do to you, is pretty common in human understanding, even common in our popular culture. You might remember the movie Chicago with Queen Latifah, her signature song, playing Big Mama Morton, when she sings what you do for Mama, Mama does for you. So she was the warden in the jail, so if they all kind of gave her bits of money, she'd make sure their time in jail was a little better. So it's always there, that sense of reciprocity. We're going to take reciprocity, just set it aside for a second, because there's another part of what Jesus talks about, which is a little harder for us to embrace. So the do unto others what you would have them do unto you, we can accept that. That's pretty easy. But we're going to set that aside for a moment, because Jesus also said that we should love our enemies. And it's nicer for us just to leave that and go on to the do unto others what you'd have them do unto you, because we don't want to think about loving our enemies. And you've probably heard lots of people ask, you might have asked it yourself, how can I love somebody I don't even like? How can you love your enemies when they're nasty people? I don't like them. How can I love them? And so we have to set that aside for a moment to talk about what love means and talk about feelings. Because when we talk about not liking someone, we're talking about a feeling. So I just want to take a second to define what a feeling is. A feeling is an automatic reaction to what happens. We often use the word feeling as though it's a thought or an opinion. I feel the economy is recovering. You don't feel that. You might think it. That might be your opinion. I feel that spring should come soon. You may not feel that. You might some days feel a freshness in the air, which makes you think that spring is coming soon. You have a feeling that makes you think. But there's a difference between a decision, thinking, an opinion, and what you feel. So, when you think about it, that makes a little sense when Jesus is talking about loving your enemies. If your enemy strikes you on one cheek, turn to that person the other cheek. He's not talking about feelings, because he doesn't say, when your enemy strikes you on one cheek, it won't sting. He's not talking about how it feels. You won't be upset. Don't worry about it. You won't get angry. He just said, if they strike you on one, you turn to that person the other. If someone makes you go 1 mile, then you go 2 miles. Jesus didn't say, and you better like it. He just said, do it. Jesus wasn't talking about how we feel about things. And when we get to the ultimate thing, Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, that one lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus didn't die on the cross because he liked the idea. He didn't die on the cross because it felt good. Quite the opposite. He did it because it was good. Because it was right for us. So, when Jesus says to love our enemies or to love anyone, he's not talking about feeling the warm, gushy, cozy, wonderful feelings. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all. It's good to feel kindly towards one another, but it's more important to act kindly. And so we can act kindly even if we don't have those lovely feelings. We can still shovel our neighbor's driveway even though they're the nastiest person on the road. We can still help somebody out even though we find them despicable for some reason. Even though we have an inner reaction which wants us to stay away from someone, we can still do something nice for them. That's still possible. We may not feel like it, but we can still do it. And that's clearly what Jesus is talking about when he talks about loving someone. Now, we love members of our family. We love people we love with, we live with. We love our close friends. And it's one thing to say to someone, I love you, and it's another thing to pick your socks up off the floor, shovel the driveway, put gas in the car, bake a cake. All those things we do, which demonstrate the fact that we really do care about one another, but those are things that we do, decisions we make. So I said about reciprocity, let's set that aside. So let's bring that back for a moment and look at it. Jesus said, if you do these things to someone that you're close to a friend, what good is it? I mean, even sinners do that. I mean, everybody does that. There's no special deal there. If you're helping someone out who's going to help you out, so big deal. Everybody does that. What do you want? A reward for that? No. Jesus said, you're going to get a reward for doing something which is unexpected, for which there is no hope of getting something back. Because great is your reward in heaven. So does that mean that if I give money to a poor person who can't give anything back to me, when I get to heaven, God's going to give me money? Like, what would I spend it on? Like a bigger house? Oh, wait a minute. That's already provided. Oh, better food? Oh no, that's already provided. Whatever we want in heaven, whatever we need is way beyond what we can imagine that God has prepared for us. What is it then that we would get in the kingdom of heaven? What is it that God's preparing for us? What happens to us when we turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, help someone who is nasty and mean and difficult with us? What happens to us? We begin to become like Christ. We begin to take on the attributes of Jesus. We begin to love like Jesus loved. And I don't mean he felt attracted to the world. I'm sure Jesus does. But I mean that he did what we needed to have done to bless us. So when we begin to bless someone else, we find ourselves being shaped into the image of Christ. We find ourselves close to Christ. We find our minds linked with Christ. You know, Paul said in Philippians chapter 2, have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So we're getting formed and shaped into who Jesus is. So the reward for us is not riches or big houses or lots of food. The reward for us is communion with Christ, is one with Christ. The good news is we don't have to wait till we get to the kingdom of heaven to share in that. And you've probably found in your own experience that when you do something good for someone else, even though you don't like that person, you begin to like them. When you do something good for someone else, your heart begins to change within you. And you begin to have the heart of Christ. Then you begin to have those feelings of attraction and compassion and love. And one builds upon another, builds upon another, builds upon another. And it's our own transformation that takes place. And so when we give a gift to someone else, whatever it may be, whether we endure their abuse or shovel their driveway, whatever it is that we do for someone else begins to change us. So the gift we give is not as big as the gift we get in return. That transformation, that making us into a better person, someone that we would aspire to be otherwise. So it's interesting that even though on the surface it looks like what Jesus is asking us to do is difficult and drudgery, turns out it's not so. It's actually quite nice. That's why Jesus said, take my yoke on you. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And when we yoke ourselves with Christ, when we pull together with Christ, when we do things together with Christ, we find ourselves filled with joy. Jesus said, I came that you might have joy and that your joy may be full. And when that happens to us, we really do rejoice and give thanks for all that God has done for us.